Chuck Schumer's awful week that he has had is continuing, and he's not getting let off the hook very easily. And he went on Morning Joe to offer a defense of why he ultimately supported the continuing resolution that was passed by the Republican House and later passed by a bipartisan vote of 10 Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, who ultimately voted for the CR. And really, Schumer's taking a lot of flack for his decision to do so, and it's being seen as a weak move by many in the more progressive left that understand the moment that we're in, the moment of America losing democracy to fascism, and people who are sounding the alarm that we need to, in fact, fight against the Trump administration's agenda at each and every turn, and voting with them to pass a totally partisan bill that had no input from anybody in the left, and in fact is allowing Donald Trump to continue draconian cuts to federal spending that are going to impact millions and millions of people in this country. That's not what we should be doing in this time. And I want to play for you Schumer's defense of why he went forward and continued, he supported the bill. And I'm going to kind of explain why it doesn't really make too much sense, his explanation. But first, we're going to look at a Mediaite article here that says, senior House Democrat says Chuck Schumer's popularity is hovering somewhere between Elon Musk and the Ebola virus. Oops. That's not good. Schumer has been criticized by many in his party for voting for a Republican-backed continuing resolution to fund the government last week. According to Axios, the frustration with him behind the scenes is palpable. From Axios's Andrew Solander, some House members are urging AOC to mount a primary bid against the New York senator in 2028. From the threads at ION, people are pissed off, and it's not just the typical lefties. One House Democrat told Axios on the condition of anonymity to share details of members' private communications. A senior House Democrat said one of their colleagues moved toward Schumer. His popularity is hovering somewhere between Elon Musk and the Ebola virus. Not very popular things. Solander also reported that Schumer is under siege from Democrats' liberal grassroots, postponing stops on his book tour that groups like the Progressive Change Campaign Committee had planned to protest. So a senior House Democrat laying down here, Schumer's not very popular with the Democrats right now. Here is Chuck Schumer going on Morning Joe and defending his position on voting for the CR.
There'd be a lot of controversy, and I'd get a lot of flack if I voted the way I did. But I knew just what you're saying. If they shut the government down, people don't understand how catastrophic that would be for America and eventually for the Democrats. When you have a shutdown, it is solely the determination of the executive branch what is essential and what isn't. The whole government shuts down, and then they pick and choose what is essential and what isn't. So, day 2 of the shutdown, we don't need to have SNAP. These poor kids, let them find another way to feed themselves. 4th day, we don't need any mass transit funding. Let the states fund it. Let the federal government fund it. Shut down the subways. Shut down mass transit. 6th day. We don't need Medicaid. We can cut it by 20, 30%. We had a Medicaid day of action yesterday. I was at a hospital in the Bronx, Montefiore, the only hospital that gives cancer care for the whole 1.3 million people in the Bronx. They said if they cut Medicaid by 20%, children will die. So they have the power. And Jonathan's source is right. One of the Republican senators told us that if there's a shutdown, they're going to keep the government shut down for 6 months, 9 months, a year. till they decimate the federal government. The $2 trillion that Musk and Doge and this horrible guy Vogt, who's the head of OMB, which controls all this, wanted to cut from the government, they could do easily and no recourse. People forget it's the executive. There have been court decisions that say only the executive determines what's essential. So unlike a CR where you can at least go to court and challenge the executive orders, you can't do it here. So I knew it would be a disaster. Now, there was a clamor, you know, stand up to Trump, and we should be standing up to Trump in many ways. But let's stand up to him smart. Let's not give him the keys to the kingdom. And my guess is that, oh, one other thing. This is what they'd love us to divert. You know, we're going after him. We're beginning to bring his numbers down because he is making the middle class pay for tax cuts for the wealthy on Medicaid, on tariffs, on everything else. This would be a complete diversion. Everyone would be debating the shutdown. Yes, no. Who's to blame? Well, they'll put this bill on the floor. Oh, we'll debate it. This is playing into their hands. And I'm a leader.
Okay, so there's Schumer's argument there. The thing to me that sticks out about this argument is really him saying, well, we can't give the executive branch the keys to the kingdom in deciding what's essential, what's non-essential, right? Here's the thing. The Republicans have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, okay? They have the keys to the kingdom. And it's largely due to the ineptitude of the Democratic Party to fight for working people and to stand up to Donald Trump on behalf of working people in this country. That is essentially why they have the keys to the kingdom, because people look at the Democratic Party and in this last election and made the decision that there's not anything that the Democrats are really providing in an alternative to what the Republicans are providing. So a lot of people stayed home that in fact showed up for Biden and Harris in 2020. So they already have the keys to the kingdom. And if the Republicans did want a shutdown and they didn't want to pass this CR bill, right? Well, all Donald Trump would have to do is signal to enough Republican senators to not vote for the bill and to and which would allow the government to shut down. It doesn't quite add up, his reasoning, because really the people in this country, when the government shuts down, people blame the party in power. And yeah, there might be some painful things that result from the government shutting down. But what his argument is essentially is we're going to let all kinds of bad, terrible things happen and in fact vote for those bad, terrible things to stop some hypothetical worse things down the line from happening. And I'm not sure I really buy that, because really what this vote has signaled is that the Democratic Party will be complicit in going along with MAGA bills and what MAGA wants to do, what the Republicans are seeking to do in the House, in the Senate. We're going to basically go along with it to not be blamed for other things down the line. No, right? In a day and age when people in this country are saying, please, Democrats, please do anything you possibly can, wield the power that you have to be wielded to stop Donald Trump's agenda, to stop federal spending cuts, to capitulate and to give MAGA exactly what they want for absolutely nothing in return other than the idea that we're stopping worse things from happening down the line. The American people aren't buying it. The American people aren't buying it. The American people want the power that the Democrats have currently, that we elected them to have, to be wielded in every single way it possibly can, to be a spoke in the wheel against Donald Trump's White House. To highlight some more criticism of Schumer, we have Nancy Pelosi here saying, I myself don't give away anything for nothing. Nancy Pelosi took a dig at Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday after he voted to pass the Republican CR, saying, I myself don't give away anything for nothing, Pelosi said during a San Francisco press conference. I think that that's what just happened the other day. Pelosi had urged Senate Democrats to defy Schumer and vote against the bill last week, claiming they were being sold a false choice. I salute Hakeem Jeffries for his courageous rejection of this false choice, and I am proud of my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus for their overwhelming support against this bill. America has experienced a Trump shutdown before, but this damaging legislation only makes matters worse. Democrats must not buy into this false choice. We must fight back for a better way. So, yeah, I mean, putting all of the onus on the Democrats to pass a partisan Republican bill when the Republicans are the ones that didn't have the votes to pass it with a simple majority, that just doesn't seem like it really adds up as being a solid strategy, knowing what we know about Donald Trump's style of governance. Here's some more talking points about this. Grassroots Democratic group calls for Schumer to resign as minority leader. Pass the Torch, a grassroots Democratic group that called for President Biden to step out of the 2024 presidential race, is now calling for Chuck Schumer to resign as minority leader. The group is part of a chorus of anger within the Democratic Party after Schumer said he would vote with the Republicans. Chuck Schumer is unwilling and unable to meet the moment, Pass the Torch said in a statement Friday. His sole job is to fight MAGA's fascist takeover of our democracy. Instead, he's directly enabling it. Americans desperately need a real opposition party to stand up to Trump. It's clear that will not happen as long as Schumer remains in charge of the Senate Democrats. It's time to chuck Schumer out, it added. Clever little play on words there. One more thing here. Chuck Schumer apparently, even deep into the 2024 race, clung onto the belief that the Republican Party would, quote unquote, expel Trump. Chuck Schumer insisted Republicans would move on from Donald Trump and go back to a past version of a party, even as Trump's return to power loomed last year, according to the authors of a new book on politics during the Biden administration. The revelation comes as Trump's second term has begun in a flurry of radical policy moves that have rocked the U.S. political landscape and triggered fears of a slide into authoritarianism. Schumer told Annie Carney and Luke Broadwater, "Here's my hope. After this election, when the Republican Party expels the turd of Donald Trump, it will go back to being the old Republican Party." That insult may cause a splash at the White House in light of Trump's abuse of Schumer, who said last week he was not Jewish anymore over the senator's response to anti-Israel college protests. According to Carney and Broadwater of the New York Times, Schumer delivered his judgment over a glass of wine one night in June 2023. With hindsight, the authors add, if Schumer had seen any of it coming, he had not wanted to face it. So Schumer's out of touch. He's out of touch with the deep distrust and upsetness that American voters have with the Democratic Party's lack of a unified response in what is being seen as a dismantling and a reshaping of how our federal government works. And really, it's highlighted by this sentiment that Schumer had deep into the election, the 2024 election, that the Republican Party is somehow still a functioning political party that can be negotiated with and worked with like the days of old. I don't fault anyone for having that belief in 2015 or in 2016 prior to Trump's first election. But really, after Trump was elected, everything in this country changed. The Republican Party was shown to be a cult of a party that was unable to keep Donald Trump from gaining power because they all basically closed their eyes to the things that they didn't want to see in order for Trump to implement and do things that they wanted to do, while not having to really suffer any of the moral consequences or any blowback for putting in a guy that has so many moral quandaries and moral drawbacks. And they put him in power and they don't want any consequences for it. And they will always look the other way every single time Donald Trump does something that they don't agree with, for the sake of hard power. And Schumer's just totally not aware of that. He's totally not aware that the Republican Party is firmly in the status of being a cult to Donald Trump. And there is no Republican Party anymore, right? Whatever existed, whatever party Schumer is thinking about existed. Whatever party Schumer is hoping could come back around after Trumpism and Trump is out of the scene, it's gone. And the Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump, and it will continue to be that way probably for a long time, possibly for the rest of American history. I mean, it's hard to understate what's happened to the Republican Party in the last 10 years or so, really longer than that. But we've seen a full-blown transition into extremism and a cultish following that Donald Trump has created around himself. And Schumer obviously hasn't realized that. Somehow this deep into Trumpism in America, and the Senate minority leader has not realized what's going on in this country. Just one more point that shows that he's out of touch with America and needs to go, and we need some fresher, younger leadership in the Senate.